Oh, did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I do play with a wonderful expression, yes. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I'll keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, have you made some of your delicious ham biscuits for Aunt Augusta?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, I see from your book that on Thursday night when Freddie Lee Shoreham and Mr. Worthen were dining with us, 8 bottles of champagne are recorded as having been consumed?
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? Oh, I ask merely for information's sake.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often noticed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage really so demoralizing as that?
Oh, I believe it is a pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them?
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
Oh, how are you, my dear Earnest? Oh, what brings you to town?
Oh, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
Oh, the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors out in the country?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
Oh, how immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Beaufort is your county, is it not?
Beaufort, yes. Yes, of course. What's with all these cups? Are these ham biscuits? Why such extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to visit?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
Oh, perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I don't think Aunt Augusta will quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. Why, it's almost as bad as the way she flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I came to town expressly to propose to her.
Well, I thought you'd come for pleasure. That sounds like business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything romantic in proposing. Now, it's very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one might be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. No, the very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Well, there's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please do not touch the ham biscuits. Lane made them special for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them this whole time.
Well, that's a different matter entirely. She is my aunt. Have a lemon bar or some bread and butter. The bread and butter's for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And lovely bread and butter it is, too.
Well, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You act as if you were married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
In the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't think it's right.
That's nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, well, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwen is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Lane, would you please bring the cigarette case Mr. Worthen left here last time he dined?
Yes,
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness you had told me. I was frantic. I was very nearly offering a very large reward.
I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Well, there is no point in offering a large reward when the thing has already been fat.
I think that's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I see that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right to read what's inside. It's a perfectly ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. Why, more than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of that, and I do not propose to discuss modern culture. It's not the sort of thing one talks of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you just said you didn't know anyone of that name?
Well, if you want to know, Cecily is my aunt.
Oh, your aunt.
Yes, a charming old lady she is, too. She's a beekeeper. And she lives all alone out in the country, just outside a little town called Fuquay, which is located near Verena, which is located near Holly Springs, which is located near, well, nothing much. Just give it back, Algie.
But why does this country beekeeper call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt? Oh, from Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what is there to that? Some ants are tall and some ants are not tall. That should be a matter that an ant should be able to decide for herself. Now, you seem to think that every ant should be exactly like your aunt, and that is utterly absurd. Now, just please, for goodness sake, give me my cigarette case back.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me your name was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if you were named Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my whole life. Why, it's perfectly absurd. You're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's even on your cards. Oh, look, here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthen, 149 Meeting Street. I'll keep this as proof. Your name is Ernest if ever you attempt to deny it to me or to Gwendolyn or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and it's Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
But that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who keeps bees, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed Beauregardist. And now, I'm quite sure of it.
Beauregardist? What on earth is a Beauregardist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why your name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Fine. Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and please, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation. It's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle from motives of respect that you cannot possibly appreciate, lives in my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is your place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I will tell you candidly, it is not in Beaufort County.
Oh, I suspected that much. I have Beauregarded all over the Low Country on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I don't know that you can understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. When a person is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone cannot be said to conduce much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Earnest, who gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Oh, modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte. Don't try at it. No, you should leave that to the people who have not attended a good university. They do it so well in the daily papers. No, what you really are is a Beauregardist. I was quite right in saying you were a Beauregardist. You are one of the most advanced Beauregardists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Beauregard, in order that I may be able to go out to the country whenever I choose. Beauregard is perfectly invaluable. Why, if it weren't for Beauregard's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I would not be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I've really been engaged to dine at Aunt Augusta's for more than a week now.
But I haven't invited you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You would much better dine with Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dined there already on Monday night, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm treated as a member of the family and sat down with either no woman at all or two. And finally, I know exactly who she will place me next to tonight. Oh, she'll place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. Ugh. It's not very pleasant. It's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. Why, the number of women in Charleston who flirt with their own husbands, it's perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It's just washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Beauregardist, I want to talk to you about Beauregarding. I want to tell you all the rules.
I am not a Beauregardist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I may do so in any case. Cecily's a little too interested in him. It's becoming a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with Mr. your invalid friend with the funny name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Beauregard. And if you ever intend to get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Beauregard. Any man who marries without knowing Beauregard has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I were to marry Gwendolyn, the charming, most wonderful girl that I ever saw in my life, well, I certainly wouldn't want to know Beauregard.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company, but 2 is none.
Good heavens, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
Oh, it ain't easy being anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about it. Oh, that is Aunt Augusta. Now, if I promise to get her out of the way for 10 minutes so you can have an opportunity to propose to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about their meals. It's so very shallow of them.
Mrs. Bracknell and Miss Gwendolyn.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
Well, that is not exactly the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Oh, dear me, you're looking smart.
I'm always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Gwendolyn.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for development. And I intend to develop in many directions.
Well, I am sorry if we are a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to stop by poor Miss Harberry's. I have not been to see her since her poor husband's death. Oh, I have never seen a woman quite so altered. She looks 20 years younger. Oh, and now I will have some tea and some of those delightful ham biscuits you promised me.
Oh, certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come and sit by me?
Thank you, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane, why are there no ham biscuits? I ordered them specially.
There was no ham at the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No ham.
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Well, that'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I am greatly distressed about there being no ham, not even for ready money.
Oh, it doesn't matter, Algernon. I had some delightful pralines while I was at Mrs. Harberry's. She seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear that her hair has gone quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed color. From what cause, of course, I cannot say. Oh, I have a delightful treat for you tonight, Algernon. I am going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. Oh, she is such a nice woman, so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
Well, I hope not, Algernon. Why, it would throw my table completely off. Your poor uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me, but the fact of the matter is that I've just had a telegram to inform me that my poor friend Beauregard has fallen very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
Well, that is very strange. This Mr. Beauregard seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Beauregard is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think it is about high time that this Mr. Beauregard made up his mind whether he is going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, and nor do I in any way approve of this modern sympathy with invalids. I find it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I keep telling that to your poor uncle, although he hardly seems to take much notice as far as improvements in his ailments goes. Yeah, I would be delighted if you would ask Mr. Beauregard from me if he would refrain from having a relapse on Saturday. For I rely on you to arrange my music for me. I like music at my dinner parties that will encourage conversation at the end of the season, particularly when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which probably wasn't much.
I will speak to Beauregard. That is, if he's still conscious. But I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. Now, of course, the music is a great challenge. You see, if one plays good music, well, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, well, people won't talk. But I will run over the program I've drawn out with you if you'll just come with me for a moment into the next room.
Yes, I would be delighted. Thank you. Yes. Well, thank you. That is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure your program will be delightful after a few expurgations. Gwendolyn, you will accompany us?
Certainly, Mama.
Charming day it's been, Miss Gwendolyn.
Please don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthen. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I'd like to be able to take advantage of your mother's temporary absence.
Oh, well, I would certainly advise you to do so. Mama has a way of coming suddenly back into a room. I've often had to speak to her about it.
Miss Gwendolyn, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of that fact. And I often wish, well, that in public at any rate, you'd been a bit more demonstrative. For me, you've always held an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthen, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name Earnest. There's just something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment that Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend named Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Do you really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Well, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest, do you?
Yes, but your name is Ernest.
Yes, but supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, personally, darling, and to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly! Oh, it is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibration.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack! Oh, God, no. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is just a vulgar nickname for John. I pity any woman who's married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. No, the only really safe name is Earnest.
I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
What?
There's no time to lose.
Marry, Mr. Worthing!
Well, surely you know how much I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Gwendolyn, that you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you have not proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I would think it an admirable opportunity to do so. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only quite fair to tell you frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
But you already know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. Oh, how long you have been about it. I must say, you've had very little experience in how to propose.
But my own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Oh, Ernest, what wonderfully blue eyes you have. They are quite blue. Oh, I hope you always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture. Oh, it is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is not the place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing was not quite finished yet.
Well, finished with what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Oh, you are not engaged to Mr. Worthing. Oh, Gwendolyn, darling, you may wait for me below in the foyer. Mr. Worthing, I have some questions to put to you.
Mama.
The foyer, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the foyer! Mr. Worthing, you may have a seat.
Thank you, Mrs. Bracknell. I prefer standing.
Well, I feel bound to tell you that you are not in my list of eligible young men. However, I am prepared to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit, I do smoke.
Well, I am glad to hear it. Men should have an occupation. There are far too many idle men in Charleston as we speak. And how old are you?
29.
Oh, well, that is a very good age to be married. I have always been of the impression that a man who desires to be married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Mrs. Bracknell.
Oh, well, I am glad to hear that. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. This whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Oh, and what is your income?
Between $7,000 and $8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
In investments, chiefly. I do own a house in the country with some land attached to it, of course, about 1,500 acres, but I don't really rely on that for my income. Now, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything off of it.
A country house? Well, how many bedrooms? Well, that point we can come back to. I do hope that you have a townhouse. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn can hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I own a house on Meaton Street.
Oh, what number on Meaton Street?
Oh, 149.
Ah, the unfashionable side. Oh, I knew there was something. Perhaps that could be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a Marxist.
Oh, well, they count as Democrats. They come with us and they dine in the evening. Now on to the minor matters. Are your parents living?
I've lost both my parents.
Oh, Mr. Worthing. To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune, but to lose both, well, that looks like carelessness. Well, who was your father? He evidently was a man of some wealth.
I'm afraid I really don't know. You see, the fact is, Mrs. Bracknell, I said that I had lost my parents, but it'd be near the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't really know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes, by the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a charitable and kindly disposition. He found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing, the seaside resort.
So where did this charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Mrs. Bracknell. I was found in a handbag, a somewhat large black leather handbag with handles on it. A rather ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in what locality was this ordinary handbag found?
In the cloakroom of the train station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
Oh, the cloakroom of the train station.
Yes, the Norfolk Southern line.
Oh, the line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I have to say I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me to be born, or at any rate, bred in a handbag. Whether it has handles or not seems to show a display of contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. And as to the particular locality in which this handbag was found, what can hardly be regarded as a sure basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask what you advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
Well, I would strongly advise you to find some relations, and as soon as possible, and to do your very best to produce at least one parent before the end of the season.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly do that. I could produce a handbag at any moment. It's in my closet at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Mrs. Bracknell.
Me, sir? What does this have to do with... Oh, You do not think that Mr. Bracknell nor I would allow our only daughter to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Oh, good day, sir. Oh, 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 oh.
Good day.
Da-dum, da-da, da-dum,
Good
da-da.
heavens, stop singing that ghastly tune, Algie. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right? Did Gwendolyn refuse you? Oh, that is a way she has. She is always refusing people.
No, Gwendolyn's right as rain. As far as she's concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Mrs. Bracknell is one. I beg your pardon, Algie. I shouldn't talk about your aunt like that in front of you.
Oh, my good fellow. I love having my relations abused. Oh, it is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations, a simply tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
You don't suppose Gwendolyn might become like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algie?
All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does. That's his. By the way, have you told Gwendolyn yet about you being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth is not the sort of thing that you tell to a nice, sweet, refined girl like Gwendolyn. What extraordinary ideas you have about the ways to behave towards a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
Well, what about Earnest, your brother?
By the end of the week, I shall have gotten rid of Earnest. I'll say he died of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. No, you had much better say a severe chill.
And you're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary?
Of course it isn't.
Very well. Ernest is carried off by a severe chill. That takes care of him.
Oh, but you had said that Miss Cardew was a little bit too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's all right. I'm glad to say that Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl. No, she has a healthy appetite, likes to go for long walks, and pays absolutely no attention at all to her studies.
I would rather like to see this, Cecily.
I will take very great care that you never do. She is excessively pretty at only just 18.
Does Gwendolyn know that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, that is not the sort of thing you blurt out to people. No, Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I bet you $1 that half an hour after they meet, they'll be calling each other sister.
Females only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and change. Do you know it's nearly 7? I'm hungry.
Oh, I never knew you when you weren't.
What do you want to do after dinner? Oh, go to the theater.
No, I loathe listening.
Oh, well, let us go to the club.
No, I hate talking.
Well, then what shall we do?
Nothing.
It is very hard work doing nothing. But I don't mind hard work as long as there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Gwendolyn.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular I need to say to Mr. Worthen.
I really don't think that I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life, and you are not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest. We may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, God, I fear we never will be. Oh, few parents nowadays pay any attention to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mama, I lost at the age of 3. But though she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry somebody else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can ever alter my eternal devotion to you.
Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as relayed to me by Mama with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has that irresistible fascination, but the simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address I have, but what is your address in the country?
Worthen Manor.
Worthen Manor.
St. George. Dorchester County.
Dorchester County. There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may become necessary to do something desperate. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
Oh, how long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I already have.
You may also ring the bell.
Darling, you will let me see you out?
Certainly.
I'll see Miss Gwendolyn out.
Yes, sir.
What have we today? Oh, look. Bill. 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 Glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Oh, tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Beauregarding. I shall probably not be back until Monday.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a very fine day.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're the perfect pessimist.
I do my best to be of satisfaction, sir.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl, the only girl I ever cared for in my life. What are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just anxious about poor Beauregard. That's all.
If you are not careful, your friend Beauregard is going to get you into a serious scrape someday.
Ah, I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That is nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense, Algie.
Nobody ever does. Ah.
Cecily. Cecily. Intellectual pleasures await you. Your Latin book is on the table. Please open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like Latin. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my Latin lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
Well, I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would.
I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. You must put your diary away, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all those dime novels at the drugstore.
Do not speak slightingly of the dime novels, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
Well, the good ended happily, and the bad ended unhappily. That is what fiction means.
Well, I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no, the manuscript unfortunately was lost.
I see dear Reverend Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Reverend Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And now, are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Oh, Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the garden, sir.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed. I was thinking about that and not about my Latin lesson when the Reverend dropped by.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
Oh, I am afraid I am.
Oh, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. Oh, I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Oh, yeah, bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sundays in Charleston. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I must not keep Agiria and her pupil any longer.
Agiria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
Oh, a classical allusion, merely, drawn from the pagan authors. Oh, I shall see you both, no doubt, at services this evening.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I do have a headache after all, and walk might do it some good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism. With pleasure. We might go as far as the river and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will continue your studies in my absence.
Horrid history, horrid mathematics, horrid Latin. Oh,
Mr. Earnest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, 149 Meeting Street, Charleston, South Carolina. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were out here in the garden. He said he wanted to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him. There, and there, and there.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid that he will look just like everyone else. He does!
Oh, you are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
And you, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all. You mustn't think I'm wicked, Cousin Cecily.
Well, if you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
Well, I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you were here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
Oh, well, that's a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Well, couldn't you miss it anywhere but in Charleston?
No, the appointment is in Charleston.
Oh, well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your immigrating.
About my what?
You're immigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
Oh, I certainly would not let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
Well, I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I have received of the next world and Australia are not particularly encouraging. No, I think this world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
Oh, I'm afraid I'm not that. Which is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind.
I'm afraid I don't have time this afternoon.
Oh. Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
Oh, that's because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Oh, won't you come in?
Oh, thank you. Might I have a boutonniere first? I never have any appetite unless I have a boutonniere first.
A gardenia?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
Well, I don't think it could be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
And Miss Prism is a short-sighted old biddy. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Well, Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
And they are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. By remaining persistently single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I have been told not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. Mr. Worthing!
Oh, Mr. Worthing!
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you until Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than expected. Oh, I hope you are well, Dr. Chasuble.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother! Oh,
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading a life of pleasure.
dead!
Your brother Earnest dead?
Oh, quite dead! Oh,
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
poor Ernest. Oh, he had his faults, but this is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died down south in New Orleans. Oh, I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Hotel St. Jacques.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Now, will the interment take place here?
No, it seems he wanted to be buried in New Orleans.
You mean above the ground? In a mausoleum? Ooh, that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this on Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of manna in the wilderness can be adapted almost any occasion. Joyful, or as in the present case, distressing.
That reminds me. Are you experienced in christening? I mean, do you know how to christen all right? Of course you do. You're constantly christening, aren't you?
Well, it is, I regret to say, one of my constant duties in this parish. But is there any particular infant in whom you're interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes. Oh.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it's not for any child, dear Reverend. No. The fact is, I'd like to be christened myself this afternoon. That is, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
Well, I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. But I don't know if the thing would bother you at all, or if you think I might be a little too old.
Oh, not at all. The sprinkling, and indeed the immersion of adults, is a perfectly canonical practice.
The immersion.
Oh, you need have no apprehension. I think sprinkling is all that's necessary, indeed advisable. Our weather is so changeable. But what hour would you wish the ceremony to be performed?
I thought I might stop by about 5 this afternoon if that would suit you.
Perfectly. As a matter of fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying farms. Poor Mr. Jenkins, a most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't think it would be much fun to be christened with other babies. No, that would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Well, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthen, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow.
Oh.
I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm pleased to see you back. What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother, Earnest! He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't even got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Why, these are very joyful tidings.
After we had been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seemed peculiarly distressing.
My own brother in the dining room. I don't know what this could mean. I think it's utterly absurd. Oh, good heavens!
Brother, I have come down from town in order to inform you that I am very, very sorry for all of the trouble I have caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to shake his hand. I think it disrespectful him coming here, and he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Why, Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Beauregard, whom he goes to visit so often.
Oh, he's been telling you about Beauregard, has he?
Yes. He's told me all about poor Mr. Beauregard and his terrible state of health. Surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of Charleston to sit by a bed of pain.
Beauregard. I won't have him talking to you about Beauregard or anything else.
Oh, I admit the faults are all on my side, but I must say I find his coldness to me to be peculiarly painful. I had expected a much more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering this is the first time I've come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Very well. But this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It is pleasant to see so perfect a reconciliation. I think we might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
Algy, you young scoundrel. You had better get out of here as soon as possible. I don't allow any Beauregard in here.
Oh, don't allow any Beauregard in here.
I have put Mr. Earnest's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Earnest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 suitcases, a dressing case, and a large picnic basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, please order the car around at once. It seems Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your sense of duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My sense of duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I am quite aware of that.
Well, Cecily's a darling.
You are not to talk about her like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes.
Oh!
You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually going to be staying with you in your house for a whole week as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are not going to be staying with me for a whole week as my guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:15 train.
Well, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in deep mourning. I would think it most unkind if I left. If I was in deep mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. It would be very unfriendly if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, but only if you're not long about it. Never have I seen anyone take so long to dress and with such little result.
Well, it's better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct is an outrage, and your presence in my garden is utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:15 train back to town, and I wish you a pleasant journey. This Beauregardin, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
Well, I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that's everything. I must make arrangements to see her again before I go, and make arrangements for another Beauregardin. Oh, here she comes.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's sending me away.
Then we have got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
Well, it is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one could endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The car is ready, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, that I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
Aw, well, I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? Oh, I'd give anything to read it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But please, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on now. I'm ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily. Yeah. Ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Now, hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily, oh.
The car is waiting, sir.
Tell the driver to come back next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack at all. I don't care about anyone in the whole world except for you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy. Of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes! It'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have become the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who's much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. And I'll admit, it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Oh, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of last February. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. And the next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
Did I get you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
Oh, my letters? My own dear, sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
Well, you need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful, it's so badly spelled, that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Wait, was our engagement broken off?
Oh, of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break it off, Cecily? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. I must say, Cecily, that I am very hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off. especially when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are.
You dear romantic boy.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you?
Well, I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. And besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Of course.
Well, you must not laugh at me, darling, but it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But one name.
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance?
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
My own dear, sweet, loving darling, I really can't see why you would object to the name of Algernon. It's not a bad name at all. It's a rather aristocratic name. Seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I fear that I would not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your, reverend here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practicing of the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a very learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
Oh, I must see him at once on a most important christening. Most important business.
Oh!
I won't be away more than half an hour.
Well, considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I must enter his proposal in my diary. In person.
Hey, Miss Gwendolyn Bracknell is here to see Mr. Worthen. On very important business, Miss Bracknell states.
Is it Mr. Worthen in his library?
Mr. Worthen went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Well, ask her to come out here. Mr. Worthen is sure to be back soon, and bring us some tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Bracknell. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in town?
Miss Bracknell.
Oh, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. Oh, what a very sweet name. Something tells me that we are going to be very great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
Oh, well, how nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other for such a short time. Oh, please sit down.
Oh, may I call you Cecily?
With pleasure.
Oh, and you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Well, perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity of my mentioning who I am. My father is Charles P. Bracknell. You've never heard of Daddy, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Well, outside the family circle, Daddy, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate. I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. My mother, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, well, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on short visit, no doubt?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some other older female relative lives here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother or any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, looks after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It is strange that he never mentioned to me he had a ward. How very secretive of him. The man grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that this news inspires me with feelings of delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state, now that I know you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help but express a wish that you were, well, just a little bit older than you seem, and not quite so very alluring in appearance, and, if I may speak quite candidly,
Oh,
Cecily.
please do. I think that when someone has anything unpleasant to say, they should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak quite candidly, Cecily, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Mr. Ernest Worthing has a strong, upright nature, but even men of the most strong moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical charms, the influence of, well, others.
Well, I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his older brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
Well, I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Oh, that accounts for it. Oh, Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was almost growing anxious. It would have been terrible if Andy Cloud had come across a friendship like ours now, wouldn't it? Now, of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to publish the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling, seriously, I think there must be some mistake. You see, Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement should appear in the Charleston Courier on Saturday at the latest.
I am afraid you must be mistaken. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Well, that is very strange, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, please do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but it appears that I have the prior claim.
Well, it would distress me more than I could tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he is clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me as an entanglement, Miss Cardew?
Oh, you are presumptuous.
On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than just a moral duty to speak my mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Bracknell, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I am very glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different. You'll excuse me.
Tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there very, very many interesting...
There's quite a few interesting things here.
interesting walks in the countryside?
Yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties. Well, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
This is quite a well-kept garden, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Bracknell.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the countryside.
Our flowers are as common here, Miss Bracknell, as people are in Charleston.
Personally, I can't understand how anybody who is anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Now, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Bracknell?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I desire tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Oh. Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Oh.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and you have, though I most distinctly asked for bread and butter, given me cake. I'm known for the gentleness of my disposition, Miss Cardew, and the sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I'm never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
Well, it seems to me, Miss Bracknell, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! Oh, my own Ernest!
Gwendolyn, darling.
Oh, but just a moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young miss?
The dear little Cecily, of course not. What could have put that silly little thought in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Bracknell. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
Oh, and Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young miss?
To what young miss? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, the good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I thought there might be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh, you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh! Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked, but my name certainly is John. It's been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us. Oh, my poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wrong Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, won't you?
Oh, yes. There is just one thing I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
Oh, an admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I'd like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some slight importance that we know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is really very painful for me to be forced to tell the truth. It's the first time in my life I've been reduced to such a painful position, and I really am quite inexperienced in the matter. But I must tell you frankly, I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother, and I have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
No, never of any kind.
Well, I'm afraid it is quite clear, sweet Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anybody.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They would hardly venture to come after us in there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
Most certainly.
I suppose this ghastly state of things is what you call Beauregarding.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Beauregardin it is. It's the most wonderful Beauregardin I've had in my life.
Well, you have absolutely no right whatsoever to be Beauregarding here.
Oh, that's absurd. One has the right to Beauregard wherever one chooses. Every serious Beauregardist knows that.
Serious Beauregardist, good grief.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Beauregarding. What on earth you're serious about, I haven't the remotest idea.
The only small satisfaction I have in this whole wretched business is that your friend Beauregard has been quite exploded. You won't be able to get down to the country quite as often as you used to. Dear Algie, and a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little exploded and off color, isn't he, Jack? You won't be able to disappear to Charleston quite so frequently, and a very good thing, too.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I think you taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can find no defense at all for your having deceived a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Gwendolyn, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cecily.
I don't think there's much likelihood, Jack, in you and Miss Gwendolyn being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then only at cocktail parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem perfectly heartless to me.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner, can I? I'd probably get butter on my cuffs. One must always eat muffins quite calmly.
I say it's perfectly heartless you eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
Whenever I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, whenever I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I'm unhappy.
Well,
Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
there is no reason at all for you to be eating them in such a greedy manner.
I wish you would have the tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens. I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you've just said it was perfectly heartless to be eating muffins.
No, I said it was perfectly heartless. You eating muffins under the circumstances, that is an entirely different matter.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
Well, I can't go without having my dinner first. It's absurd. I never go anywhere without having some dinner first. Ugh. By the way, I just made arrangements with a Reverend Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name of Earnest.
The sooner you give up that nonsense, the better, my dear fellow. I made arrangements myself this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30. I will naturally take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be named Earnest. That's absurd. Besides, I have every right to be christened if I wish to. There's absolutely no evidence at all that I've ever been christened by anybody. And I think it extremely probable I never was. And so does Dr. Chasuble. It's entirely different in your case. You've been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That's the main thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can withstand it. If you're not quite sure of your ever having been christened, I must say I find it very dangerous you venturing on it now. It might make you quite unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected to you was very nearly carried off this week by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said that a severe chill isn't hereditary.
Jack, you are at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There's only 2 left. I told you, I was particularly fond of muffins.
Algernon, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
Well, I haven't finished my tea yet. There's still 1 muffin left.
Ah!
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house as anybody else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
But they have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to have noticed us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
Oh. They're looking at us.
They're approaching. It's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence produces an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing! I've just one question to put to you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, please answer the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
Well, that certainly seems like a satisfactory explanation, don't you think?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for having pretended to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have the opportunity of coming up to town as often as possible to see me?
Can you doubt it, Miss Gwendolyn?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Now is not the moment for skepticism. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
Oh, true. Oh, I'd almost forgotten there are principles at stake. Which one of us should tell them?
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are willing to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk about the equality of the sexes. When questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are!
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Mrs. Bracknell!
What does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by my trusty maid, I followed her at once to the train. I am glad to say that her unhappy father is under the impression that she is attending a more than unusually lengthy debutante party at the country club. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. Therefore, you can clearly see that any communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as in all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Mrs. Bracknell.
You, sir, are nothing of the kind. And now in regards to Algernon.
Oh, yes. Intergusta.
Algernon. May I ask you, is it in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Beauregard, resides?
Beauregard? No, Beauregard doesn't live here. Beauregard is, he's somewhere else at present. In fact, Paul Beauregard is dead.
Oh, dead? Well, his death must have been quite sudden. When did he die?
Oh, I killed Beauregard this afternoon. I mean, Paul Beauregard died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, Beauregard was quite exploded.
Exploded?
I mean, he was found out. The doctors found out that Beauregard could not live, and so Beauregard died.
Well, he must have had a great confidence in the opinion of his physicians.
So,
I am glad, however, that he made up his mind to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. Well, now that we have gotten rid of this Mr. Beauregard, Mr. Worthing, who is this young person whose hand my nephew is holding in what seems to me to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That is Miss Cecily Cardew. She is my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Miss Cecily.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Mrs. Bracknell.
Well, I do not know if there is something peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of Dorchester County, but the number of engagements that goes on seems to me to be particularly higher than the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think a little preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, may I ask you, does Miss Cardew have any connection to any of the local railway stations? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any persons or families whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of Savannah, Georgia.
Cardew, Savannah. Well, that seems satisfactory. Well, so far I am satisfied.
That is very kind of you, Mrs. Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you'll be pleased to know, certificates of her birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, and the measles.
Well, a young life filled with incident, I see, though somewhat too exciting for such a young girl. I myself am not in favor of premature experiences. Oh, Gwendolyn, look at that. The time has come for our departure, and not a moment too soon. Oh, Mr. Worthing, may I ask as a matter of form, does Miss Cardew have any little fortune?
Oh, only about 130,000 in a trust. Goodbye, Mrs. Bracknell. I am so pleased to have seen you.
130,000? And in a trust?
Oh.
Well, Miss Cardew seems to me to be a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Oh, few girls these days have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that will last and improve with time. Oh, come here, dear. Oh, wait, your dress. Oh, it is sadly simple. And your hair. Oh, it looks almost as if nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all of that. A thoroughly experienced hairdresser can produce really marvelous results in a very brief space of time. Why, I remember recommending mine to a young Mrs. Lanson, and 3 months later, her own husband didn't know her.
And 6 months later, nobody knew her.
Come here, dear. Turn around. Let me see you. Turn. The side view is what I want. The side view is what... Thank you. Oh, well, it is just as I expected. She has some definite possibilities in her profile. Chin a little higher, dear. Yes, style is largely dependent on the way the chin is worn. They're worn very high at present. Oh, Algernon. Oh,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
she has distinct social possibilities in her profile.
Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, prettiest girl in the whole world. And I don't care squat about social possibilities.
Do not speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who cannot get into it do that. Now, my dear sweet child, you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. Well, I do not approve of mercenary marriages. Why, when I married Mr. Bracknell, I didn't have a penny of my own. Well, I never let that stand in my way. I suppose I had better give my consent.
Oh, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Mrs. Bracknell.
And you may refer to me as Aunt Augusta in the future.
Oh, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I think this wedding had better take place quite soon.
Oh, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
And to speak frankly, I do not approve of long engagements. They give a person a chance to find out each other's character before marriage, which I never think is advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Mrs. Bracknell, but I am afraid that this engagement is entirely out of the question. You see, Miss Cardew is my ward, and I am her guardian. She cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent, I absolutely decline to give.
And on what grounds, may I ask? Why, my nephew Algernon is an extremely, why, I might almost say, an ostentatiously eligible young man. Why, he has nothing, but he looks everything. What more could one desire?
I hate to speak so frankly to you, Mrs. Bracknell, about your nephew, but the fact is, I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? That is impossible. He is a Methodist.
I fear there can be no doubt. This afternoon, during my temporary absence, he obtained admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my brother. He subsequently stayed for tea and devoured every single muffin. To make his conduct even more heartless, he knew perfectly well from the first that I have no brother. I have never had a brother, and I have no intention of ever having one, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Well, after careful consideration, I have decided to completely overlook my nephew's conduct towards you.
That is extremely generous of you, Mrs. Bracknell. However, my own decision is unalterable. I will not give my consent.
Come here, dear. How old are you, child?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
And you are perfectly right in making some slight alterations. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it seems to me that you will soon be of age and free from the restraint of tutelage. And therefore your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of no importance.
Pray forgive me for interrupting you again, Mrs. Bracknell, but I think it only fair to tell you that according to her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not legally come of age until she is 35.
Well, I do not see any grave objection. Why, 35 is a perfectly lovely age. There are lots of women in Charleston society at the very highest of births who have remained 35 for years. Mrs. Dumbleton is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has remained 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which I know was many years ago. So I see no reason why our sweet Miss Cardew shouldn't be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is now. And there'll be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. Now, I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
What's to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as you have heard my Miss Cardew state positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a statement I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature. I beg of you to please change your mind.
But, Mrs. Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your hands. You see, the moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will happily allow your nephew to marry my ward.
Well, you must know that what you propose is completely out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that awaits any of us.
Well, that is not the destiny that I propose for my Gwendolyn. And Algernon, he can choose for himself. Gwendolyn, we really must go. We've already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform. Oh.
Everything is quite ready for the christening.
Oh, the christenings? Isn't that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At that age? Why, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Your uncle would be highly displeased if he learned that this was the way that you were wasting your time and money. Oh.
Am I to understand then there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that under the circumstances there's much practical value for either of us, dear Reverend.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. As your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I shall return to the church immediately. Indeed, I had been informed by the pew opener for the last hour and a half. Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Prism! Did I hear you say a Miss Prism?
Why, yes, Mrs. Bracknell. I'm on my way to join her.
Please, allow me to detain you for a moment. The matter might prove to be of vital importance to myself and Mr. Bracknell. Is this Prism you speak of a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected to education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
Well, it is obviously the same person. What position does she hold in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism has, for the last 3 years, been Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
Well, in spite of what I have heard from her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting there for you for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left the Bracknell house in charge of a baby carriage carrying a baby of the male sex. But you never returned. A few weeks later, after a thorough investigation by the Charleston police, that carriage was found standing by itself at midnight in a remote corner of St. Michael's Alley. It contained a manuscript of a novel of more than unusually repulsive sentimentality. But there was no baby. Prism, where is that baby?
Mrs. Bracknell, I admit with shame, I do not know.
Oh,
I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the day that you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out on its stroll. I also had with me a somewhat old but roomy handbag in which I intended to place the manuscript for a work of fiction I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental distraction for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the carriage, and I placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of great importance to me. I must insist you tell me where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
The cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in Charleston.
Which railway station?
The High Battery Station, Norfolk Southern Line.
I must go to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, will you wait here for me?
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
Oh, what do you think this means, Mrs. Bracknell?
well, I could hardly venture to guess. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are not considered the thing. Oh!
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
Oh, I cannot stand that noise. It seems as if he's having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It's stopped now.
Oh, I wish you would make up some mind to some conclusion. Oh,
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Please examine it carefully before you answer. The happiness of more than one life depends on your reply.
It seems to be mine. Oh, here is the injury it received from the upsetting of a trolley car in younger and happier days. And here on the lining is a stain it received from the explosion of a temperance beverage. An incident that occurred in my college days. And here on the lock are my initials. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly returned to me. It has been inconvenient being without it all these years.
More is returned to you than just this handbag. It was the baby you placed inside it.
You?
Yes, Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried!
Unmarried? I don't deny that is a serious blow, but after all, who has the right to throw a stone at one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there must be some mistake. There is the lady that can tell you who you really are.
Mrs. Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly tell me who the hell I am?
well, I am not sure very pleased with the news I have to tell you, but you are the son of my dear sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all. I always said I have a brother. Cecily, how could you doubt it that I have a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you are going to have to start treating me with more respect in the future, you young scoundrel. You have never behaved like a brother to me in my whole life.
Not until today, I admit. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? Well, what is your Christian name now that you have become somebody else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is quite irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
And the matter must be settled at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. When Miss Prism left me in that handbag, had I been christened already?
Well, every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished upon you by your fond and doting parents.
Yes. Then that is settled. I was christened. Let me know my name. Let me know the worst.
Well, naturally being the firstborn son, you were christened after your father.
But what was my father's Christian name?
Well, I do not recall what his Christian name was at the moment. But I am sure he had one.
Algy, can you not recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear fellow, we were not even on speaking terms. He died before I was even a year old.
I suppose his name must appear in the military list of the period, Aunt Augusta.
Well, the colonel was a man of peace, except in his domestic life. I'm sure his name would appear in the military journals.
The military list of the last 40 years are here. Oh, these delightful records should have been my constant study. Malum, Maxbum, Migsby. What ghastly names they have. Marksby, Magsby, Mobs, Moncrief, Ernest John. Gwendolyn, didn't I always say that my name was Earnest? Well, it actually is Earnest. I mean, it naturally is Earnest.
Well, I do recall now that the colonel was called Earnest. I knew I had a particular reason for disliking that name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. Oh, I always knew you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to suddenly find out that he has been telling the truth his whole life. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own darling.
Letitia!
Frederick, at last! Oh!
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
Oh, my nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, for the first time in my life, I've realized the vital importance of being earnest.